The morning light breaks, the city wakes up, and I'm still here waiting for you.
How does a voice born in the chaos of the streets rise high enough to touch the stars? That question lingered like a song waiting to be heard, and it began in the narrow alleys of Cebu, where dreams were often drowned by the sound of traffic and survival. The city woke slowly every morning. Jeepneys coughed smoke into the sunrise, vendors arranged fruits with tired hands, and barefoot children chased laughter through puddles left by last night's rain. Amid the noise, a young man stood quietly beside a cracked wall, his guitar held together by tape, his eyes filled with something deeper than hope. His name was Miguel Cruz. To most passers-by, he was invisible, just another street singer blending into the rhythm of the city. But those who paused, even for a moment, felt something they couldn't explain. His voice wasn't perfect. It trembled. It carried the dust of the streets and the ache of sleepless nights. Yet inside every note was a strange, sacred beauty, the kind that made strangers stop and forget the world for a second. He sang the songs his mother used to hum while washing clothes by the river, songs about love, loss, and the promise of better days. Her memory lived in every chord, every breath, every tear that hid behind his quiet smile. Coins clinked into his open case, but they were never enough. Enough to eat, maybe, but never enough to escape. Still, Miguel sang. Because when he sang, the city changed. The noise softened. The people slowed. And in those fleeting moments, it felt like even the sky listened. As the morning sun rose, painting golden light over broken walls, Miguel closed his eyes and whispered a silent promise to the wind, that someday, the world would hear his mother's song. Someday, this voice born in the streets would reach beyond the noise, beyond the poverty, and into the hearts of millions. No one knew it yet. But the boy singing on the corner was about to change everything. Dreams often begin in silence, in the moments when no one believes, and yet, the heart refuses to let go. For Miguel Cruz, that silence had lasted years. Countless mornings of street singing, sleepless nights of saving every coin, and endless prayers whispered into the dark. The night he finally held his plane ticket felt unreal. It wasn't just paper, it was his mother's dream, reborn in his trembling hands. The airport lights felt blinding. People hurried past him with luggage and laughter, while Miguel stood still, holding a small, torn backpack and a guitar wrapped in an old cloth. Everything he owned fit inside it. Everything he was, fit inside his voice. He had never been on a plane before. The thought of crossing oceans felt bigger than anything he'd ever imagined. America, a land he had only seen on screens, was waiting on the other side. Not for him, perhaps, but for the song he carried. At the check-in line, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photograph, his mother, smiling softly, holding him as a child beside their bamboo house. Her eyes seemed alive in the dim airport light. "I'll make you proud," he whispered under his breath, though no sound came out. As he boarded, the weight of the guitar pressed against his shoulder like memory. He found his seat by the window, hands clasped tightly, watching the city lights of Cebu fade into a constellation below. For a long time, he couldn't breathe. Then, as the plane climbed higher, a calmness washed over him. The streets, the noise, the hunger, they all fell away beneath the clouds. Up there, above the world that once ignored him, Miguel felt something shift. It wasn't fear anymore. It was destiny, gentle, slow, unstoppable. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just singing for survival. He was flying toward a dream too bright to look at, and too powerful to ever turn back from. Dreams have a sound, sometimes it's applause, sometimes it's silence before the first note. For Miguel Cruz, it was the sound of his own heartbeat echoing inside an arena too grand to believe. The night of his America's Got Talent audition arrived like a dream wrapped in fear. The air backstage buzzed with nerves and neon lights. Performers paced, whispered, prayed. Miguel stood alone in a quiet corner, clutching his guitar, the same one that had survived rain, street corners, and countless songs sung to no one. When his name was called, the world seemed to blur. The stage was a universe of light. Thousands of faces stared down at him, and somewhere in the front row, the legendary judges waited, curious, skeptical, unaware of the story behind that fragile smile. He stepped into the center. The floor felt endless beneath his feet, and the microphone stood like a question only he could answer. The crowd murmured, some curious, others doubtful. A young man from the Philippines, unknown, trembling, about to sing for the world. He closed his eyes. For a heartbeat, everything disappeared, the cameras, the crowd, even the fear. Only one image remained, his mother, by the window of their old home, humming softly as the wind carried her song through the slums. That memory became his courage. The first note escaped his lips, gentle, uncertain. Then another. And another. The hall fell silent. Even the restless camera crew stopped moving. The sound of his voice filled the vast space like a prayer whispered into eternity. It wasn't loud. It wasn't perfect. But it was true. Every word carried years of hunger, loss, and love. Every note held his mother's heartbeat, his own unbroken promise. Simon Cowell leaned forward. Backstage, the noise was deafening, cheers, shouts, camera flashes, but Miguel Cruz heard none of it. He stood frozen, his chest still trembling from the final note that had left his lips. The applause outside sounded distant, like waves crashing far away. In the middle of it all, he felt small, like that boy again, barefoot in the streets, clutching his guitar against the wind. He sank onto a wooden bench, his hands shaking. The tears came before he could stop them. For years, he had carried the memory of his mother like a hidden flame, a light that kept him alive in darkness. And tonight, for the first time, that flame had burned through everything. He remembered her voice, soft, worn from years of struggle, telling him that music was more than sound. It's what remains, she used to say, when words can't carry your heart anymore. Those words lived inside him. They were the rhythm beneath his songs, the pulse behind his pain. As he sat there, Miguel pulled the old photo from his pocket, edges torn, colors faded. His mother's smile looked the same as it always had, patient, proud, full of a love that never asked for anything in return. He pressed the photo to his chest and closed his eyes. In that quiet corner, surrounded by fame he never asked for, he realized something powerful: he hadn't come here to win. He had come here to thank her. Every sacrifice she made, every hunger she hid, every night she sang him to sleep when she herself was breaking, it had all led to this. The crowd roared again, louder this time. Somewhere, a producer called his name. But Miguel didn't move. His tears weren't of sadness anymore. They were release, the kind that comes when a dream and a memory finally meet. He knew she was gone. Yet somehow, he felt her near, like a soft hand resting on his shoulder, whispering through the noise. And in that moment, he understood, he hadn't sung alone tonight. He never had. Some moments don't need words, only silence, only light, only the sound of hearts remembering what hope feels like. For Miguel Cruz, that moment came weeks later, under the same blinding lights that once made him tremble. The AGT results night was unlike anything he had ever seen. The stage shimmered in gold and smoke, the audience buzzed with electric anticipation. Millions watched from around the world, waiting to see who would move forward. But Miguel wasn't thinking about victory. He stood quietly, guitar in hand, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of everything that had led him here, the streets, the hunger, the loss, and the love that never let him give up. When his name was announced, the cameras zoomed in. Simon Cowell rose from his seat. The judges clapped, slow at first, then louder, until the entire arena stood. Miguel didn't understand what was happening. The stage lights burst into gold confetti. The golden buzzer, the symbol of a dream finally seen, rained down around him like a storm of blessings. He dropped to his knees, unable to speak. The crowd erupted, voices blending into one immense wave of joy. Somewhere above the noise, he thought he heard a whisper, soft, familiar, eternal. "You did it." It was her voice. His mother's. Not from memory, not from pain, but from peace. And suddenly, the tears returned, not out of grief, but gratitude. He wasn't the poor boy from Cebu anymore. He wasn't the invisible singer lost in the crowd. He was a son who had kept his promise. The judges approached him with smiles and open arms, but Miguel looked beyond them, past the lights, past the cameras, to something only he could see. He wasn't chasing fame. He wasn't seeking validation. His music had done what it was meant to do, it had healed. That night, the world didn't just hear a Filipino voice. They heard the sound of every dreamer who ever sang against the noise, every mother who ever believed when no one else did. And in that golden rain, Miguel Cruz finally understood. Sometimes, the most powerful voices come from the quietest places.